We're shooting in a brand new park today. This is Calgary's Refinery Park. Interesting fact, it's actually built on the old site of an oil refinery that was leaking oil right next to the Bode River and endangering the nearby occupants in Ogden. Now it is a lovely park, but you wouldn't know it because all Calgary parks look exactly the same in the wintertime. Yellow or brown, take your pick. Welcome back, DPRV TV viewers. It's Chris Nichols here, coming to you from a place where we launch boats. And we have a shootout for you today. It is the Enthusiast full frame camera shootout. We've got 4 models to look at today: the Canon EOS R6, the Nikon Z6 II, the Panasonic S5, and the venerable Sony A7 III. Now, yes, I know the Sony A7 III is an older camera, absolutely, but it still can hold its own. We didn't want to look at the Sony A7C for this shootout because honestly, although it's priced like a mid-range enthusiast full-frame camera, it is aimed at a more entry-level crowd. We wanted to keep it to cameras that have lots of external controls and dual card slots. We're going to test these cameras over 5 criteria. Let's get to it. All right, our first category, overall handling. In 4th place, it's going to be the Sony A7 III. The camera's age is showing here. Although it does have excellent battery life with the Z-type battery, you know, the menu is convoluted. The touchscreen interface only worked for autofocus point selection. Overall, the buttons and dials felt kind of plasticky, and the weather sealing had some issues. It's just the camera design has come a long way, and Sony themselves have vastly improved on this design as well. Now, in 3rd place, it's going to be the Panasonic S5, but to be totally honest, by this point upwards, all of the 3 cameras handle very well, and we're really nitpicking here. The S5 does have kind of a plasticky feel and a very lightweight feeling body, although that was kind of the intention behind this camera. The grip is fantastic though, and otherwise the controls are very easy to use and extensive. If you did want a beefier feeling body, you can look at the Panasonic S1. It certainly gives you that more full-size feel. In 2nd place, it's the Nikon Z6 version 2, carrying off of the excellent Z6 body. We loved this right off the bat. I mean, the grip was fantastic. All the controls feel great. Autofocus joystick is fantastic. And it really did give you a solid SLR kind of feel, but in a more compact mirrorless body. Our only real quibble with this camera is the fact that we don't get a fully articulating screen. But again, that's something that polarizes a lot of people. Some of you out here prefer this, I know. One nice new feature on the Z6 version 2, we can actually now reverse the manual focus control ring direction. For me, I don't care. I've always loved the Nikon way, but it drove Jordan insane. That means 1st place is going to go to the Canon EOS R6 because clearly they're paying us.
No, nobody's paying us, Chris. We've been through this.
How am I going to pay for Christmas presents? Regardless, the Canon EOS R6 is a fantastic camera. It handles beautifully. I love the 3 control dials. The fully articulating screen, of course, is our preference. It has smart menus. It has a great touchscreen interface. Canons, as much as we've on them in the past, have always had very nice ergonomics and an interface to boot. So the Canon EOS R6, deservedly our 1st place winner. Now, the EVF and back panel are windows to the camera's soul, and in 4th place, it's the Sony A7 III. In fact, the only notes I have for this camera are, it's old. And I mean, that's really at the heart of it. I mean, when it first came out, the 2.36 million EVF, the 921,000 LCD panel, they were fine, but camera technology, EVF display technology, and affordability has come a long way in the last 2 years. On top of that, we just have a tilt screen. Now, if we're going to crap all over the Sony for having only a 2.36 million EVF, but it's been 2 years, then what's the Panasonic S5's excuse? We've got a very similar 2.36 million EVF in here, and that's unfortunate given the competition and what's available at this price point. Luckily, the back panel is a big improvement. We do have a fully articulating touch panel, and it's over 1.8 million dots, twice the dots of the Sony A7 III, but still, we wish we had more here. In 2nd place, the Nikon Z6 II. We have great optics in this viewfinder, 3.69 million dots, over 2 million dots on the back panel. I mean, this is what we're talking about. The only thing that really lets this camera down, though, is they haven't improved the somewhat unimpressive refresh rate on that actual EVF. We're still only at 60 frames per second. However, we do have a very nice viewfinder with which to compose. In 1st place, we've got the Canon EOS R6. This and the Nikon Z6 version 2 have very similar EVF and displays, 3.69 million dots here, over 2 million dots on the panel. However, this does have a more impressive refresh rate. On top of that, we do have a fully articulating LCD panel instead of the Z6 II's tilt screen, so that for us slightly edges it out.
Jordan here to talk about the best cameras for video, and I've got a tie for third place between the Nikon and the Sony. These are the two cameras that aren't going to offer you 4K 60 recording. However, which one's going to be better for you kind of depends on your use case. In the case of the Sony here, we get internal log recording and fairly good autofocus, though I have to say the video interface for using that is pretty lackluster. 8-bit only, but internal recording does give you some flexibility. Jumping over to the Nikon Z6 II, with an external recorder and a paid upgrade, we can actually get raw video recording. You can do ProRes RAW with this. As well, you get access to the N-Log if you're recording externally. Internal recording, it's just 8-bit, no log recording at all. You just get the flat profile. It's very easy to grade, but doesn't have a lot of dynamic range. In second place, it's going to go to the Canon R6. I know there are overheating issues with this, and if you're going to record continuously or in hot climates, this might not be the camera for you, but the new firmware did make a huge improvement to that. And look at what you get here. It's got 4K 60 recording, it does internal 10-bit with C-Log, and we're going to get C-Log 3 coming for this shortly, which will give it increased dynamic range. Autofocus is great, the stabilizer works very well. This is a very competent video camera. My favorite of these cameras for recording videos is the Panasonic S5. It was already really capable when this first shipped. You're getting internal 10-bit recording. You get the full V-Log profile, which is my favorite log profile out there. But since then, they've brought out a new firmware update that's giving it 5.9K RAW externally. And that's not line skipped or pixel binned. It is absolutely beautiful quality. We're getting assist tools like waveforms. The thing can do anamorphic. It is a very capable video tool. Only drawback to that, if you need continuous autofocus, this is still going to struggle. But outside of that, this is an amazing video camera for the price.
No, don't worry, this isn't one of those annoying ads that pops up in the middle of the video, although I am interrupting the video. Isn't it nice that we don't have those ads at the start and middle of our videos? That's because we rely on you to subscribe to our channel. So please, please subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that. We actually just had a recent push. We almost made it on our deadline with the amount that we needed. Didn't quite get there, so I'm not gonna say Nikon for the rest of the year, but I will say Nikon's company name like a samurai. So here goes. Nippon Kogaku Kogyo Kaushiki Gaisha. So you get that once, that's your consolation prize, but we have another challenge coming up, so please look at subscribing, and if we reach that one, Jordan will have a very exquisite challenge to deal with for the rest of the month. All right, thanks so much guys. Keep subscribing, keep watching, back to the video. Next, we're going to talk about image quality, but you have to understand that all four of these cameras have very similar sensor technology. We are splitting hairs, and any differences are going to be situational, but we got to have a number 4, so I'm going to give it to the Sony a7 III. Now, Sony gets a bad rap, especially on the DPReview.com forums, for having poor quality JPEG color, even though I think that is highly subjective based on the user's experience and a moot point because in post-processing you can do all manner of stuff to it. Plus they have fantastic high ISO noise reduction, but I only use all the brands of cameras on a regular basis, so what do I know? Oh wait though, right, they don't have any sort of lossless compressed RAW format, so 4th place. In 3rd place, it's the Canon EOS R6. I mean, here's the thing. This definitely wins the most improved sensor badge. I mean, it really came a long way. Canon's needed improving. The dynamic range is way better than it was before. The high ISO performance is definitely better without the mushy softness that we would get with Canons. Unfortunately, though, the scan speed is still quite slow. Strange, because this is coming from their sports camera line, so that's not an improvement. But we are looking at 20 megapixels versus 24. It's not a big deal, honestly. Look at this sample here and see if you're really gonna miss those 4 megapixels, but it does put it at a disadvantage to the cameras above it. In 2nd place, it's the Nikon Z6 II. This camera is a fantastic implementation of the 24 megapixel sensor within it. They've addressed some of the banding issues that we saw in the Z6. I like the JPEG color and look of it. Overall, there's just nothing really bad to say about the images out of this camera. In 1st place, it's going to go to the Panasonic S5. I happen to really like the way Panasonic render the color in their images. I think it's beautiful and highly subjective, but there's other improvements here too. We are lacking a phase detector array. We're going to talk about that. However, that does mean that there's no issues with banding or any reflections of that phase detector array showing up in your images, so that might be a plus. And on top of that, there's a big benefit here that puts it above the rest. We have IBIS in all 4 of these cameras, in-body image stabilization, but the S5 is the only one to utilize it to give you a multi-shot mode where we can effectively quadruple the megapixel count on our files. It's nice for landscape photographers, tripod work, anywhere that you want to get that extra resolution that the other cameras cannot do. Our next category is autofocus performance. In fourth place, you guessed it, it's the Panasonic S5. They still stubbornly hold on to a contrast-only autofocusing system. The S5 does, however, have their much improved latest version of their DFD autofocus. It addresses a lot of the issues like the annoying wobbling during continuous autofocus, and the hit rate is actually very good. I still feel, though, that by stubbornly holding on to this non-hybrid AF performance, that they are still lagging behind the competition. In third place, it's the Nikon Z6. Now, Nikon has improved their autofocus quite a bit in the last couple of years, and the Z6 version 2 has dual processors. It helps even more so. We get much less eyelash detect autofocus than we did before, and much more actual eye detect autofocus, and the hit rate has been improved. They're also working on the interface. I like the way that you now have a new wide area face and eye detect selection. I can specify with a box where I'd like to keep the face and eye detection to, but still, overall, these are slight improvements in the autofocus performance, and I feel that Canon and Sony are still doing a better job. In second place, it might be a surprise, but it's the Sony a7 III. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but some of the old tricks that it does know, it might still be really good at. You still got a very good hit rate in continuous shooting, and the eye detect, even being 2 years old, works fantastic. Sony have since vastly improved this with their real-time autofocus tracking system, and if you want that, keep in mind that for a very similar price point to the other cameras, you can get into the a7C. But I think it's important to understand that this camera sets such a high precedent for good autofocus that all the other manufacturers have been trying to reach this level up till now. And speaking of other manufacturers that have tried to aspire to the Sony model, in first place, we got the Canon EOS R6. I mean, I still feel that Sony's with the real-time tracking AF do slightly better, but this is very close. Most importantly, our hit rate in continuous autofocus is very good. Our eye detect here works brilliantly. The interface, the touch screen, setting your tracking to initial point, making it so easy to select things. These are all important factors. You don't just want a camera to hit autofocus every time. You want it to be very simple and straightforward. And compared to the other three cameras in our competition, this is easily the best. Well, it looks like Canon has won our competition. It is personally one of my favorite platforms for photography that I've ever shot on, but it is the most expensive camera, so that does also make sense when it comes to the rankings. In number 2, we have a slight edge towards Panasonic and then Nikon in third place, but really I think it depends. If you're more video oriented, the Panasonic makes a lot of sense, but I still think the Nikon gives you a better user experience for photography. In last place, it's the Sony a7 III, but honestly, this camera is now over 2 years old. It was the very first review that we ever did for DPReview TV. And we have to keep in mind a couple things here. First off, if you don't have a Sony a7 III, yeah, maybe it's worthwhile to wait for whenever an a7 IV comes out with real-time tracking autofocus, the new touchscreen and menu interfaces. I think it's going to be a winner. But if you already have an a7 III, enjoy the fact that you still have a very competitive camera. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We do have a Nikon Z6 II review coming out soon, so please hit the notification button, subscribe to make sure that you don't miss that. Go to dpreview.com. Thanks so much. See you soon.